Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Let's talk about some films. So, you guys should know the deal with this series by now. At the end of each month, I do a video where I go through all the films that I watched in that month, and I give you my very brief thoughts on each of those films in as quick fire of a manner as possible. At least I try to do it as quick as I can. And yeah, that's all there really is to it. So, without any further ado, I'm going to get straight into this one. And the first movie that I watched in November was Atlantis, The Lost Empire. So, believe it or not, this is actually the first time I've seen this film, and it's one of those animated Disney films that was released in the late 90s to the early 2000s that has always intrigued me, but I've never actually seen. I know Treasure Planet is another one that fits that category very well. But Atlantis has always intrigued me ever since I saw the teaser trailer for it back on the VHS for Emperor's New Groove that I used to watch all the time. Ever since I first saw the teaser trailer for this film, I've always been intrigued to see it, but never had the right opportunity to watch it. However, I was bored one day and I decided to stick this on Disney Plus. And I gotta say, for the most part, I did really enjoy this film. I think the animation looks absolutely gorgeous. I think that is definitely one of the best aspects of this film going into it. I also really liked the variety of the characters in this movie, and I thought they all bounced off each other really well. And the script is also very, very good. You can tell that this has got Joss Whedon's name all over it. However, one of my biggest issues with the film is also one of the biggest praises of the film as well, and it's a bit of a weird one. The energy and pacing of the film is something I cannot commend enough. I absolutely love how relentless and fast paced this movie is from the moment it starts. It kind of just keeps going at a specific rate. And again, I absolutely love the fact that they decided to do it that way. But because it keeps going at such a fast manner, it sometimes doesn't know when to calm down at times. Especially in the first half of the movie, it feels like it is going a bit too fast and rushing through things that are kind of important, whether that be plot wise or character wise. After that, I then watched The Harder They Fall on Netflix, which is this fantastic Western action movie directed by James Samuel. And after watching this film, I am so looking forward to pretty much anything else this guy does because there is so much to love about this movie. I came away from it absolutely loving it. The cast are all absolutely brilliant. Everyone is fantastic in it. There is not a single weak link in the entire cast. And one thing that I really loved about this movie that I feel doesn't get mentioned that much is the fact that the film gives each character a moment to shine. Because I feel like a lot of these movies that have ensemble casts, some characters can kind of be left to the wayside and don't get enough screen time as they should. This movie, on the other hand, gives literally every key character a moment to shine or a moment of significance, and no one feels like they're left out. Everyone gets just the right amount of screen time to make them feel important for these specific moments, and I absolutely loved that about this film. On top of that, it's brilliantly well directed. I loved the style that was just oozing out of every single shot of this film. It feels like, in a way, the best Tarantino film that Tarantino has never directed. Unfortunately, I then followed this up with Eternals, the newest MCU film. I was really looking forward to this movie, specifically down to two reasons. One, the cast sounded great, and two, it was directed by Chloe Zhao, who directed Nomadland last year, which is a film I absolutely loved. I didn't get a chance to see it last year, but when I did get a chance to see it, I absolutely loved it. This movie, on the other hand, I was incredibly disappointed by. And I feel like this is one of those films, and you can definitely tell this by just looking on Twitter for like 5 seconds, is that this is a film are either going to love or you are either going to hate. I personally fit somewhere in the middle, leaning a little bit more towards not liking it. There's a lot I admire about the film, and there are positives in it for sure. For example, I love the diversity of the main 10 characters. I absolutely loved the fact that it wasn't necessarily ham fisted, like, it wasn't just jammed down your throat. It was just kind of there. The diversity was just kind of there, and you had to accept it. And I thought it worked, especially considering who these characters are and what they've been through. I thought it made sense. And I really just liked seeing it in this film. Also, the film looks rather pretty. The cinematography is quite nice to look at. And there are some action set pieces here and there that were quite enjoyable. However, everything else about the movie just felt like a bit of a slug to get through. Now, don't get me wrong, I love long films. This film is 2.5 hours long. And if done right, long films, especially with that kind of runtime, and especially ones that are quite slowly paced, can be really enjoyable. I mean, look at Dune, for example. That film is pretty much the same length as Eternals, yet I was absorbed by that film for every single second of its runtime. Eternals, on the other hand, I struggled in a few places because it is just such a slog to get through at points. And I think the main issue with this film is the fact that, as brilliant of a director as Chloe Zhao is, her style doesn't necessarily translate to this type of story that very well. Because if you've seen Nomadland, or even her other previous film, The Rider, you will know that she almost has like a documentary style approach to her stories. She just kind of lets these moments play out and kind of lets these moments meander and wander, and they just kind of feel like they're happening there in front of you. There is not necessarily, especially with Nomadland, that doesn't feel like there's a key structure to not just specific scenes, but the film as a whole. And you're just kind of observing stuff. And for the sake of Nomadland, it really works because it feels like you're observing these tender personal moments that you wouldn't otherwise see. However, for something like Eternals, which is this grand sci fi movie with very bold ideas, the two don't necessarily work. After that, I then watched The Beta Test, which is the newest film from Jim Cummings and PJ McCabe. I really enjoyed this film. If you've been following my channel since about 2018, you will know that I've been a massive fan of Jim Cummings' work. Ever since he released his feature length debut, Thunder Road, in 2018, I've pretty much been on board with anything this guy has made. Um, I even thought The Wolf of Snow Hollow, his last film, was a pretty decent movie. I didn't love it as much as Thunder Road, but I thought it was a very unique take on the horror comedy werewolf subgenre. However, I do think The Beta Test is the best film he has made since Thunder Road. Don't think it's as good as it, but it is definitely a step in the right direction. The first 20 or so minutes are a tad clunky, but after that, you can tell that it is locked in on a specific thing, and it pretty much just sticks with it for the entire runtime after that, and it finds its stride after that point. And I just loved every single minute of it. Then I watched the film CODA, which, as of a couple of days ago, I found out was a remake of a foreign film, which I was not aware of. Because as I was watching the movie, I thought it was its own original thing, but apparently it's a remake of a foreign film. The more you know. But anyway, CODA, I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was very sweet, very heartfelt. And there were some really, really well done scenes, especially in the third act, that really kind of hit hard. specifically one at a music college right near the end of the film that I feel like, and this doesn't just go for this scene, but it kind of goes for the whole movie in general, is that there are a lot of moments and ideas in this film that, if handled a specific way, could have been a bit too cheesy and a bit on the nose. And there are moments in this film where it feels like it is going in that direction, but luckily it restrains itself every time from not going too cheesy, and it feels just right. After that, I then watched Rebecca Hall's directorial debut, Passing, which I have some interesting thoughts about because I think it's a film that I appreciate a lot more than I actually like. There are certain aspects of this film that I love, mainly the cinematography. This film is shot in black and white, and considering the subject matter of the film, and the way it is handled in this movie, the use of black and white cinematography is so simple yet so creative. Like, there is a conversation scene near the very start of the film, um, that again is shot fairly straightforward, but you pretty much get from that one scene alone why it is shot in black and white, and from that moment on, you understand what they're going for, and it is such a, like I said, a creative but simple use of black and white cinematography. Apart from that, though, I just felt like there was something about this movie that I couldn't quite latch onto. Um, and I think half of that is to do with the pacing. This film is only an hour and a half, but it feels like it's a lot longer than it is because it does take its time with everything. Um, but like I said, this is a film that I appreciate more than I actually love it. But if this is a film that you absolutely love, I can completely understand why. And I do feel like this is a film I will come to appreciate more over time than specifically at this moment in time. And then I decided, for some reason, to watch the new Disney Plus reboot of Home Alone called Home Sweet Home Alone. Um, this is one of the worst films I've seen all year, and for the sake of brevity, I am just going to repeat my Letterboxd review, which was very short and sweet. All I said was, "What a pile of shit," because it really is. Don't watch it. Just watch the original or even Home Alone 2, because those are the two best ones in the franchise, and those are the only ones you need to watch. The next movie I watched was this small, low budget Australian film called Friends and Strangers, which is currently available to watch on Mubi. I didn't know anything about this film going into it, but I was pleasantly surprised by this film. It is one of those movies similar to Kelly Reichardt's Old Joy or Cogonada's Columbus, where the plot is kind of secondary and the moment is the thing that it is the main focus of the film. The characters and what they're doing and them just talking and minding their own business is what the main focus of the film is. After that, I then watched Pablo Larraín's Spencer, which I absolutely loved. It's one of my favourite movies of the year. If you have not seen the video essay that I did on this film, then please go and watch it. I'll link it somewhere up here, wherever they decide to put it. But yeah, long story short, it's a fantastic film. I think Kirsten Stewart should get all of the nominations. And just as a whole, this film is a masterclass in every aspect of filmmaking, whether it's directing, performance, cinematography, score. Everything just fits into place perfectly like a puzzle. After that, I then watched Lin-Manuel Miranda's directorial debut, Tick, Tick, Boom. I went into this movie not really knowing who Jonathan Larson's was. All I really knew is that he created Rent, and that was about it. However, By the time I'd finished this film, I feel like I had a greater understanding and appreciation of not just him, but his legacy and what he had done. And the fact that this film had done that, I think, is the biggest praise I can give this film. Also, this movie captures the struggle of the creative process in one of the best, most realistic ways I've ever seen in a film. I really enjoyed this movie a lot more than I was actually expecting to enjoy it. Because don't get me wrong, I do like Lin Manuel Miranda's work, especially with Hamilton, etc. Um, but I didn't know how much of him and his style was going to come through in this film. Thankfully, his approach to stuff is somewhat held back, and you can tell that he wants to make Jonathan Larson and what his story is the main focus without Lin Manuel Miranda getting too much in the way of that. And I thought that was the best choice he could have made. And yeah, this film is just so good. I have not been able to stop thinking about this film since I saw it on Netflix. After that, I then watched my very first Celine Sciamma movie, which was Tomboy. I know a lot of people like rave about her stuff, like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, or even her new film Petite Maman, which I have not seen yet. Um, and I've been meaning to check out her stuff for quite some time, and I thought I would ease myself in gently with Tomboy, which I've heard quite a lot of good things about, like everything else she's done. And I was really impressed with Tomboy. Uh, from this one film alone, I'm hooked. I want to see more from her, because it is handled in such a natural and genuine manner that never feels like it is too invasive or going in one of two directions, and those two directions are either being too grounded and dramatic or too Hollywoodized and glamorized. Because those are the two options that most people tend to take with a film like this or anything, dramatic. Tomboy, on the other hand, just feels like these real, natural, authentic, personal moments actually played out, and a camera just happened to be in the room. Then I finally got round to watching Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho, a film that I have been desperately wanting to watch all year. Edgar Wright is my favourite filmmaker working today. I love everything that the guy has done, whether you're talking about the TV series Spaced or pretty much any of the films that he's made. With that being said, though, with everything I've just said, Last Night in Soho is the first film I have seen of his that I've felt a little conflicted by. There are elements that I really, really like about this film, such as the concept, the themes, the ideas, the performances, and also the homages visually to 60s and 70s horror films. All of those aspects I really appreciated about this film. Also, the fact that his direction as well feels a lot more restrained than it does in some of his other films like Baby Driver or Scott Pilgrim. That being said, though, there are other aspects of this film that make it feel a little bit cheap and tacky, and I don't exactly know why. I still am trying to put my finger on why there are aspects of this film that didn't work, because I still, for the life of me, can't figure out why that is. But it just was. There were certain aspects of this film that felt a little uneven, but I can't quite pinpoint what they were. And then after that, I watched the musical Annette, which is written and conceived by the band Sparks and is directed by Leos Carax. I quite like Sparks. I know they're very eccentric. I don't know everything they've done, but especially after watching Edgar Wright's Sparks Brothers documentary, I feel like I know them a little bit better. But the main thing you need to know about them is that they're a bit quirky and they're rather eccentric. Leos Carax, on the other hand, I've never seen any of his films. I've been intrigued to see Holy Motors for quite some time, but I've never got round to it. Annette is one of the strangest, weirdest films I've ever seen in my life. The core story at the center of it makes complete sense. I could follow it very easily, and it's quite easy to follow. Everything else around it, though, is very weird. I'm still trying to figure out how I fully feel about this movie. I know I liked a lot of aspects to it, but I know there are a lot of other aspects that just kind of had me scratching my head. Um, Again, this is another one of those films that if you adore this film, if you love it, I can completely understand why. But for me, I'm not sure whether it's my cup of tea. Thankfully, I finished the month with Peter Jackson's three-part documentary series, The Beatles Get Back. Now, I say it's a series, it almost plays out like three separate films. And I will say one thing before I get into anything. If you do plan on watching this, because I highly recommend it, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. But if you do plan on watching it, I recommend you do what I did and space it out over 3 days, because this is a three-part documentary where each part is about 2.5 hours to 3 hours each. So you do need to space it out. Now, you might be thinking, does it need to be that long? My answer is yeah, it really does. Because what Peter Jackson did is he spent 4 years trying to whittle down 60 hours of unused footage from the Beatles recording sessions in the late 60s that were never used. They've just been sitting in a vault for about 50 years, never been seen. And that time in the Beatles' career, I think most people will agree, is one of the most fascinating, because though they were still together and they still got on with each other, it's when tensions were starting to rise. And these sessions were turned into a documentary film back in the 70s called Let It Be, but unfortunately that documentary focused more on the negative side of the process, whereas this three-part series, I feel, has a very even balance of showing some of that tension, showing them having fun with the process, and also just showing that unfiltered creative process of them songwriting and working together. And I feel like the film works so much better because it doesn't hone in on one of those specific aspects. Instead, it shows you all of them as it happened. So you can kind of make your own mind up on the events that happened and see them as they really were as people, rather than seeing a filtered version of them, or a filtered version of what exactly happened, where you're not getting the whole truth, you're just getting some of it. This is everything that happened in the order that it happened, and you're getting it in a very unfiltered manner. And I really appreciated about this series. So, guys, that is everything that I watched in November. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what you thought of some of these films, and also just let me know some of the films that you watched for the first time in November, whether you liked them, whether you didn't. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do so, and give the video a thumbs up if you haven't done so already either. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.